I'm Reginald Giggington, and you can call me Reggie, and today I'll be continuing a painting journey through the miniatures of Senjutsu by Stone Sword Games. Today, we're going to be doing our first add-on character, two even, the Ashigaru and Hachiko. Ashigaru, historically, were the peasant militiamen and foot soldiers of the Japanese military. More numerous than samurai, but with less training and social status. For inspiration, I drew from Shogun, the popular series that recently aired, with a wealth of interesting, traditional Japanese armors on display. I decided to base my Ashigaru off of Yabashige's army seen in episode 3. Their dark green and navy blue aesthetic really captivated me, and I wanted to try and recreate it, though as you'll see, I found some limited success in that effort. Be that as it may, we'll be starting with the Ashigaru himself. Now the first step is going to be a dry brush of sick green all over the armor, followed by an all-over coating of orc flesh contrast. The result should make a nicely highlighted deep dark green, like so. For our next step, we're going to do the belt around his waist using tan, as well as toning down the larger flat panels on the torso by hitting their center with dark green, as the sick green shows a little too brightly. We're going to use Rakarth Flesh, Bugman's Glow, and Steel Legion Drab now to accomplish several things. First off, Rakarth Flesh is going to be used on all the cloth elements, as well as the flaps on the back of his hat, and, though I'd wait to do it after his skin, the chin strap for his hat as well. Then, Steel Legion Drab goes on the spear haft, the hilt of his katana, the soles of his shoes, and his jingasa. Lastly, Bugman's Glow is used on his skin, as well as his fingers and the ropes on his shoes. Because Bugman's looks so similar to tan, we're going to be using it, at least on the shoe ropes, to look like the same material as the belt, but without having to highlight it later. Now comes the great mistake. As I mentioned at the beginning, my attempt to copy Yabashige's Ashigaru didn't go very well. I think this is the step where things start to go awry, and it has a lot to do with the usage of Akalian green here. Now you can either follow this tutorial exactly, and the result is going to have an interesting green, blue, and orange color scheme across the entire mini. Alternatively, I talk briefly towards the end about the steps I took off camera that, personally, I preferred the results of. If you want yours to end up looking like mine does in the thumbnail and at the beginning of the video, just watch until the end, where I'll discuss the changes I made. But it starts with leaving out the Akalian green here. In any case, I use Akalian green all over the cloth parts, Retributor armor on the decorative band of the Yari, the Tsuba of his katana, and the crest on his jingasa, and lastly, Surcoat's silver on the blade and pommel of the Yari. I recently picked it up to replace a pot of lead belcher that was running empty, and I've gotta say, I'm very pleased with the results and recommend it highly. Now we're going to wash the mini. Again, if you're looking to replicate the thumbnail, just don't touch the cloth elements. Otherwise, I washed the entire mini with a black wash, except for the gold elements and the skin, which receive a flesh wash. To highlight, we use tan once again, applied to the belt. I also use it to color the ropes between each segment on the armor. There's roughly 5 dots per band and roughly 4 bands per section. It's also what I use on the ropes around his tsuneate on the legs. We're going to highlight the gold and skin now, using Cadian flesh tone on all the skin parts, and Retributor armor to hit a few key points, like the edge of the Tsuba or the 3 rings around the Yari's metal band. In the game, the Ashigaru is a relatively weak character, with less health than his opponents. But to supplant his weaknesses, he's armed with a loyal dog, Hachiko, to support him. This dog was named after a real-life Japanese Akita who was made famous for their posthumous loyalty to their master, waiting 9 years for them to come home. We're going to come back to the Ashigaru in a bit. At this point, barring his base, he's done, quote-unquote. But like I said, I'll discuss at the end some changes I made afterwards. In the meantime, we're going to get started on Hachiko, who I wanted to paint in a very special way, paying our respects to a much-beloved icon who's no longer with us. My Hachiko is going to look like Kabosu, more popularly known as Doge. To start, we're going to use buff applied all over the dog. It's a pretty thin color, so it may be worth doing 2 layers, and even then be prepared for some of that original black to show. Then, we're going to paint the top half, roughly down to shoulder height on each side, using Express Nuclear Yellow. Be sure to blend in the transition where it reaches plain buff, since we want it to look like a gradual gradient between the 2 colors. We're then going to dry brush Beastie Brown on the top of their head and very lightly on their spine and tail. Wraithbone is up next, which is going to be dry brushed on the legs, such that the paws are the brightest part. We're going to use Doom Death Black, Toxic Boils, and Rakarth Flesh now. Toxic Boils is going on the foot pads, on his raised back leg, and on the inside of the mouth. Then, Doom Death Black goes all over the gums and mouth, plus the nose. You should also dry brush it around the snout between the nose and upper lip. Lastly, use a little bit of Rakarth Flesh for his teeth. You can do the eyes using pure Doom Death Black, but I felt they looked a little disturbing like that, so I added a bit of Ghost Gray to give the eyes some white. I'm not totally pleased with the effect, but it does at least look a little less creepy. To base them both, we're going to apply Charred Brown all over the ground and Mechanicus Standard Gray on the stones. You can dry brush them with Dawnstone now for a darker effect, or wait until after they've been washed, the next step, for a lighter color, which is what I end up doing. As mentioned, we're going to use Wash on them now, using Black Wash on all the ground. For the directional arrow, I use Earth before the previously discussed dry brush. Now that rounds out the tutorial as I originally completed the mini. But the more I stared at the Ashigaru, the more displeased I was with him. Even though the original ones from Shogun have a very similar color, it just didn't seem right to me. So, after I finished filming, I spent the whole day staring at him, and eventually decided to revert back to when I thought the Ashigaru looked best, and that was right before the Akelian green was applied. So, what I did instead was repaint the cloth elements in Rakarth flesh. If you left off the Achelian green, you can pick up from the instructions from here. I followed by washing the cloth with flesh wash and then a thinned down brown wash, before highlighting once again with Rakarth flesh. For the armor panels, I added some dark green to the textured areas on his shoulders. It was somewhat unclear to me whether or not they were intended to be armor, but I decided he looked better with them styled as such. I then applied a thinned down 3:1 contrast medium to Achelian green mix to give it a more navy hue. For the belt, I did a second layer of highlights using Jakero orange, and I also detailed his eyes using Ghost Gray and Doom Death black. The strips coming off the back of his helmet I redid in Ghost Gray with a black wash over top, since they now needed to look distinct from the Rakarth flesh shirt color on his neck. For the freehand on his chest, I used Bugman's Glow to paint a small fan, and finally dark green for a dot in the center. Let the entire process serve as a lesson to you. Never get married to an idea. My original vision for the character had a very dark hue, with a deep dark green navy blue color to it. In practice, though, I found it didn't translate very well. And so instead of searching for a way to make that set of colors look good, I instead searched for a way to make the model look good, period. In doing so, we remind ourselves of one of the most important rules of painting. You can always repaint things. Stripping models and redoing them from scratch, or even just layering more paint over top is always an option. Bear that in mind, and you'll never make any mistakes that you can't solve. Have fun painting your Senjutsu miniatures, and feel free to tag me on Instagram, @ReggieGick, to show me how yours turn out. Links to my affiliated socials can be found in the description. Feel free to subscribe or like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon with another painting tutorial.